Oh look, it's Mao's Little Red Book. Now, this is actually a philosophy book. I don't tend to read a whole hell of a lot of philosophy, despite, you know, having picked up a degree in it and having been very interested in certain like forms, uh, particular topics in philosophy, rather than one person's overlying uh, philosophical framework. I never really liked exploring one person particularly. This is called On Bullshit by a Princeton professor, Harry G. Frankfurt. And it was written not all that long ago, 2005, I think. Very tiny book, 80 pages, but small, with reasonable sized print. Wonderfully bound. Like, I don't really think about this, but you can actually see the real the sewn binding, and I'm not sure how common that is. But this is I think this is by Princeton Press, which probably uses old-fashioned methods. Yeah. Um, so it's titled On Bullshit, and it is about bullshit. It's about how we use bullshit as kind of a verb. Now, he doesn't step out right away and say, this is what I mean. And the whole thing is kind of interesting because I can't decide if this is humor or a tongue-in-cheek attempt at doing something very, very seriously that it's hard to justify that it really needs this kind of investigation, or if it's fully fucking serious and I just find it amusing as hell. And that's sort of I don't know if you see that very much in humor writing, but in acting for humor, the straight man is the straight man, right? And they can be very good, and they provide, you know, the backdrop upon which the comic is there. But a good comic has to come across totally invested in whatever the stupidity is, right? They can't be playing it as, haha, I'm so funny. And so this is perhaps as a writing thing, by placing it as kind of by doing it in the form of a philosophical treatise, it's like really, really amusing. But, you know, somebody who's taking things seriously, somebody could reasonably be taking things seriously, that not in a writing situation, but give that same comedic vibe because it's just funny as hell. They're taking something ridiculous seriously, and this feels like it might be that. I think it's probably that middle ground. I think he's got a tongue-in-cheek aspect to him. There feels like there's a little playfulness to this, but I also think that he does consider it to be an important topic. I find it more amusing than that. The first thing, I was actually considering doing an annotated reading, something I kind of considered and offered to a couple of people. Well, I offered on Facebook to see if anybody was interested in it for the Tolstoy, because that moved me in certain ways, and this also triggered thoughts throughout. And unlike the quantum philosophy book that I covered, the one basically showing that there's an ontological problem in dealing with quantum mechanics under any kind of normal framework, or at least claimed to be. It was like the ontological fracture or whatever. Unlike that, this one I feel pretty damn qualified to speak to. What he does is he digs into, first he goes to the OED and gets definitions, and then he goes from there, and this feels a little sloppy, he goes from the OED to find early references to the word bullshit and examples of it, and then eventually he moves on and takes bullshit adjacent terms, things like bull session. His main thesis is that bullshit means not quite lying. What he ends up coming to after, kind of guiding everything together is that act of speaking bullshit, right? Of bullshitting, whatever, at whatever level you take it, is conversation and giving information without real regard to the truth, and most especially giving information about yourself without any regard to the truth. And that he comes up with examples, and then he actually has a postscript, which is somebody rebutted this. I mean, okay. Somebody basically, not rebutted, but came up with arguments against this. One of the big ones was the one that first hit me, which is, yeah, but that's not the only meaning of bullshit. Except the guy who did it stayed in that same verb aspect of bullshit. And I'm actually very interested in a different facet, or particularly focused on a different facet, because it seems the furthest away. And I'm curious about it because words, using the same word for multiple things doesn't happen usually without there being a connection between the two. And I'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I mean, it seems like a perfectly reasonable construction and meaning for the word under one set of circumstances. And he basically bows out of the criticism that, like, he's only covered one type of bullshit here, and that there may be other meanings to the word, and there may be other words that are adjacent to it, like horse shit, or I would say chicken shit, because I actually think the other meaning of bullshit that I'm most interested in might be closest to chicken shit out of them all, that have slightly different meanings. I found his comparison to bull session particularly disturbing, maybe because it's a word I just don't use, right? I use bullshit. I would probably use horse shit and chicken shit. I would use bull. I would use bull crap. It's all, I would use bull dinky. It's all like, all those are related and they're all usable and everything. Hogwash. What's the one? He kind of finds a connection with humbug, which I'm really not sure that I agree with. But again, that's not a word I really use. To me, that's a word that comes from Dickens, Christmas is a humbug. Well, I kind of don't think of it like the way Scrooge uses humbug there doesn't feel like it's all a bunch of malarkey type of, or it's bullshit or something. I don't feel like that. To my second meaning of bullshit, yes, I do feel like it fits it. I feel like what he's saying is it's this stupid excuse for Scrooge. It's the only use of humbug I'm used to, except for buggery and humbuggery, which is just like something I say, without any real meaning behind it. When Scrooge is talking about Christmas, and uses humbug, what he means is it's this waste of time in which, people aren't working when they could be productive, and they're off partying, and they're doing this other shit, and they're with their families, and they should be, engaged in the business of the nation, which is business, right? To be your old 1920s, or for that matter, 1870s Victorian, but 1920s Republican kind of, attitude of it's just getting in the way of stuff. Now, that is closer to the meaning of bullshit that, like, I immediately viewed and said isn't in here, but I think there's a connection. I'm not going to spend many words trying to write out what that connection is, but something. So you get a bum deal somewhere, right? And this comes close because it comes close to that deception side of the bullshit, which it's like not necessarily meaning to deceive, but not precluding the meaning to deceive. Like, it's not saying you can't. So he doesn't go into. He doesn't stand on the principle that you can't be bullshitting and lying at the same time about the same thing. You can have an additional intention to lie and to deceive, but bullshitting can kind of be happening coincident to that. But here's one. I'm trying to find one that doesn't fit that category, because I feel like I've had them in my life. But here's one that definitely kind of does fit that category and fits in with the meaning of the misleading. You get a coupon. It says, come into our store and get a free ice cream. And you show up with the coupon, and it turns out you gotta buy an ice cream, and they're overpriced. And, it's going to cost you about the same as 2 ice creams would in order to get a free one. And your reaction to that is, this is bullshit. Not really the coupon is bullshit, just the whole thing, the whole situation, the whole perspective. I could even see saying that in relation to, like, your tire blows out on the road. It's an unexpected thing. It doesn't fit in with everything else, and it's unwanted and undesirable, and maybe it's just that it went against your expectations in a way. I could see reacting to that. Just an element of bad luck happening and being like, this is fucking bullshit. As opposed to chicken shit, which feels like kind of meaningless stuff. And you could again link that in if you said this is bullshit about chicken shit type stuff. Like make work or something along that line. And this is a term that I don't much use. So again, I'm looking back at like the 1940s usage or whatever that I can kind of remember from reading about. There's kind of a, well, why do I have to do it? That's the bullshit behind it, whatever. So that kind of fits in there. But no, the idea that something bad just happened or something you didn't expect, and it doesn't meet your concept of what was supposed to happen. Were you bullshitting yourself that everything would be okay? It doesn't feel that way. It just feels like it's a reaction to, this fucking sucks. It's that kind of term. Now, he's not discussing that at all, but I think in a lot of cases, like the coupon case, there is a sort of linkage. And again, language moves. It moves a lot. So like discussing things like, honestly, chicken shit, horse shit, bull session, which again, to me, not something that I'd use. This is a guy who's maybe, I don't know, he's writing in 2005. He's probably no more than 20 years older than me. At that, I don't know. Could be. This could have been at the very end of a long career. And if you're looking at someone like my dad, uh, yeah, he's old. He was born in '29. He's lived a long time. But yeah, so you're looking at he was already in his 70s. Well, 20 years older than I am now, but he was in his 70s back then. So yeah, uh, bull session probably meant more then. But my interpretation of that was different. It wasn't people sitting around bullshitting, which is something else. When people are sitting around bullshitting in my era, it didn't mean with no regard to the truth. For example, and it certainly didn't mean trying to change people's opinion about how we saw ourselves or anything like that. And he's got that kind of thing where it's like testing out weird ideas and stuff like that. What if we took all the children and put them aside, and so it's like you're bullshitting in the sense that you're not expressing an idea you really believe in. Usually, when we were sitting around bullshitting in that sort of way, like in a way that's adjacent to bull session, what I think about is a friend of mine who would say that when we were sitting around talking about history, revealing facts, little bits of knowledge that we had, stuff that didn't fit in with our normal conversation that we would have, it was just outside of that normal conversation patterns. And yeah, that we wouldn't want to summarize or discuss everything that we had, but it just wasn't in the norm. Now, when I think bull session normally, I'm like, yeah, it's guys talking about football and all that kind of stuff. And I could see the equivalent to that in games and whatnot. And we certainly had that. We would, in this same kind of discussion, we would talk about games we played and history that went back and whatnot. But there was no real, I don't feel like there was a particular disregard for the truth that worried its way through that whole thing. So I find all of this just doesn't link to the word the way I'm used to it. And it could be that this guy who, let's see, 29, is 40 years older than me, had a different meaning to it in his time period than I did in mine. Just like, when I'd talk to my dad and I'd be like, I don't have any friends. I'd be like, that's bull. You have lots of friends. And I'd say, no, those are buddies. And then he'd be like, no, buddy's the more important thing. Like a buddy is somebody that you fight and die in a foxhole with. I mean, not that he was in war, but he was in the army. But to me, like a friend means love. Okay, buddy is somebody that you do shit with. So it was like we inverted the meanings between each other, and I certainly see buddy as a lot more casual than friend. Friend is like, I don't know. It's something really big to me. But yeah, so I mean, the meanings of the words are so fluid and everything that trying to pin them down like this is doing feels really, really weird. And maybe he's trying to pin it to some original meaning, but it goes back so fucking far that I don't think the relatively limited etymological effort he put in, let's look at the OED, is sufficient at all. I think you'd want to put a lot more effort into the original meaning, where it came from, where bull and shit come from, how they may have gotten that combination, meaning more than just a pile of bovine feces. And really worked on that angle more than he does. He works more on this philosophical angle, which feels like it's grounded in his meaning of his time, in his particular subculture of bullshit. Just like I can look at mine and say, yeah, his doesn't make sense to me. That's not what I see as bullshit. It's a part of it. It's a very, but it's not the only thing. And I'm not really so sure that I'd say it's terribly inadvertent. It may be not the primary goal, right? But if my primary goal is to inflate myself, isn't the bullshitting where I'm telling untruths just lying in its own way, and I don't know. I found it kind of intriguing. Anyway, I was given this, but also told, hey, if you don't want to keep it, I'll take it back, because I loaned these out, and I don't think I need to read this again, but it was definitely an interesting little read. It definitely triggered, the sort of mental saliva in terms of digesting the thoughts that were within it again. And again, I considered doing an annotated reading, but I don't think it's that worthwhile to do that. I don't feel like I disagree all that heavily with what he's saying. The main thing that I saw is just this feeling of he's using bullshit in a way that I don't mind and that I accept, but I don't think it's as fully what my experiences of the word in my age, in my culture are. And so he's trying to pin down a word and its meaning for his age and his culture and his slice of existence and whatever. And okay, maybe that's all it really meant to you. But I feel like it meant more of that. I sort of am getting gypped by fate. I'm more likely to say, this is bullshit about the car tire blowing out than I am about, if somebody's spinning a lie to my face. I probably am not going to think that's bullshit. I'm gonna think in other terms. When I think bullshit artist, I think of somebody who's coming closer to lying. That they have something that they're trying to do to me with those words. And maybe he's right with it doesn't matter if they're true or not, say them enough and, they might as well be kind of thing. But, yeah. So by his writing, I would, by his interpretation, I would say religion is all bullshit. Because there's almost a deliberate refusal to accept the truth values that we can easily assess. And to say, you gotta have faith. So it almost is inherently bullshit. Which doesn't feel right. It really doesn't. Because it feels like these are things that are, whether or not they're true, right? They're of such importance and such truth to the person. But that's the conclusion that I come to, is that the ultimate form of bullshit that and he doesn't touch on this at all, but the ultimate form that he represents is actually a strongly held and believed religious faith. Which may be why it's important to the person who gave Lent it to me. Anyway, I don't want to psychoanalyze my buddies or friends. There's some, it's not that gray area. Friends are very hard. It takes a lot. But yeah. All right. Anyway, wanted to get this covered. It's a short little thing, and was kind of fun to read. But now I got to figure out what I'm going to read next.